Welcome, friends. My name is Lucas, and this week I had the opportunity to speak to Cassidy van der Kamp. She is a filmmaker. She's the host of her own YouTube channel. She has conversations on there, and she makes video essays. One of those essays we'll be discussing today. It's about Taylor Swift. I had a lot of fun discussing that, and we spoke about meaning and religion and death, the usual topics that you're probably used to by now on this channel. In the conversation, I promised Cassidy I would describe what this little corner is in the introduction, because that's some necessary context, I think, for this conversation. And I'll try to do it quickly, and then I'll link a video down below in which someone else does it a bit more thoroughly and more creatively as well. I think this little corner is a community of people that are interested in ideas, specifically religious ideas. They're interested in meaning, and they're interested in connecting, and that's why it's a community. So the people within this little corner speak to each other, and we have channels, and we have conversations that we have on those channels. And then there are certain thinkers, pillars, you can say, of this little corner that have largely informed a lot of our ideas about meaning and religion and psychology. And so it's a bit difficult to describe, but once you're in it, you'll start to understand it, and you'll also have trouble describing it exactly. But it's a special little place, and Cassidy has been a part of it for a long time. She has a beautiful story within this little corner as well, and how that interacted with her life is very special. I think I'll be able to find a conversation in which you can find her story, because I don't want to sell it short here. But yeah, we had a lovely conversation today, and check out the links to her channel down below, and also I will link tickets for the Breakwater Festival, which she is organizing at my parents' place in July in the Netherlands. So we'll speak a lot more about that very soon. For now, enjoy the conversation, and I'll see you guys. I am at my parents' house. Why is this location special to you? What is going to happen here?
Yeah, well, it's the venue for our next Breakwater Festival, which is the third annual one that we've done so far. And yeah, really, for people who don't know what it is, it's basically a sort of event that is kind of targeted at helping estuary groups locally kind of grow roots, become more sustainable. And so we bring speakers together and provide different sort of events in uh, estuary times where people can sit and have conversations and kind of like really intensely know each other and
Uh-huh.
have relationships. And so, yeah, your father has graciously allowed us to do this next one at your family home.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's a beautiful property. It's got horses and lots of nature around. We're really, really excited to have it there. So I'm sure
Very
I'll
cool.
be visiting there quite often in the
Yeah,
next coming months.
yeah. That's really good. The tickets are out now. I saw yesterday, so I'll put that in the link in the description. Sorry.
Yeah, so pre-sale tickets are available until May 31st, or the early bird tickets, and then we have
Mm-hmm.
pre-sale tickets up to the day before, and then we'll also sell tickets day of, but they're cheaper if you buy them before. So the earlier you buy them, the
Uh-huh.
cheaper they are. So anyone in the Netherlands or around the Netherlands, we would love to have you. And yeah, all the information's in that link. So
Good.
you can see all of the speakers we have coming, and the schedule and theme will be coming out very shortly.
Good. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
have Stefan speaking as well, I believe.
Yes.
Will be
Yeah,
from
it's
the
her father, Bas van Os,
Mm-hmm.
Stefan, Charlie's Little Corner is his YouTube, I believe, and then
Mm-hmm.
Sarah Fulmer. And Sarah has spoken at one of our festivals previously, and they're all bringing very interesting things to the table. And we're supposed to have a conversation with all of them soon, so they can kind of give a little preview of what they're going to be talking about, and
Mm-hmm.
sort of start the conversation before the event begins. So I'm really excited about that. And I think this one will be really fun because outside of just having speakers that are very much participators and providers to this little corner and estuary, we also have a lot of things that we're incorporating in the festival to really get community members involved and participating as well. So it doesn't just feel like you're sitting watching people give lectures, like you're part of the conversation, you're
Yeah.
asking to it. And yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's one of my favorite things that I've been able to be a part of. So it's got
Cool.
a special little place in my heart. I hope
Yeah.
to do it for a while.
Yeah. So, like the organizing this whole thing, what made you become a part of that, and what inside of your, let's say, personality and character motivates you to be part of something like this?
Yeah, well, so my background is in filmmaking, and I worked in entertainment for a long time when I was in America. And one of the primary roles that I had was helping organize a stand-up comedy festival in the US, and that was really fun. But I eventually kind of I wanted to do similar things, but that had a little more like heft and meaning to it.
Yeah.
And so when I got involved with Paul Vanderklay and Estuary and all of the things that were happening there, it was really exciting for me to see that in person desire, uh, um, like rippling in
Yeah.
the online community. And I wanted
Mhm.
to be a part of it. And I knew it a skill set that I could. When the conversations first started, it was before COVID happened. But then the lockdowns happened, and everything just stopped. And so the online community really grew with very little in-person action being taken because we really couldn't. There was a lot of uncertainty with that. But eventually, as the lockdowns went down and more freedoms came back to people, um, we were able to start the conversations about doing in-person events again. And at that point, I was actually moving to the Netherlands. I wasn't quite officially moved, but I had moved all of my things to the Netherlands, was working to get moved here, get married, and yeah, kind of setting my mind and being here in Europe. And so I kind of was like, oh, well, I guess that whole event planning thing, that's just going to have to be on the back burner. But very quickly after, Matthias, one of the partners in the festival, announced the first one in Germany. And I just emailed him and he said, do you need any help? And he graciously allowed me to come on. And since then, we've just sort of ran with it. And it's been so fun to plan these events and utilize all the different skill sets we have and just bring the community together. And it's been so fun to work with the German community first, because Matthias and David have done so much to really foster that community and make it something that isn't just one big meetup once a year. Like they're constantly in communication with each other, having weekly calls online and monthly meetings in person, and seeing how the festival has been able to support them in growing and building these relationships has been so great. And I'm really excited to see that happen in the Netherlands. One, because I live here, and to have that sort of activity grounded more locally is a beautiful thing. But I just see how much excitement we have in the Netherlands for Estuary. Anytime we've done little events, or even just the Estuary text messaging group that we have, it's just so exciting to see that hunger for it. And if we can help create a little more community and support, we would love that.
That's beautiful. I'm sad to not have been a part of one yet, and I have my honeymoon like right at that time, so I'll come back like right as you guys are finishing up.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to do it again, and
Yes.
then I hope to be a part of it. But
Yeah,
it's
that would be
it's really
amazing.
exciting. Like I think 40, 50 people is really it's really going to be very cool.
Yeah,
And
well, and this year, the last couple of years, we'd always sort of made it available to 100 people,
oh
but we
yeah.
always ended up with around 40.
Hmm.
And it worked out really well with that number. Now, with the venue that we have, we're kind of limited to 40, but we also like the idea of really just saying, hey, let's limit it to 40,
Yeah.
especially since the first time in the Netherlands, really focus on the community efforts and trying to connect people instead of trying to get a big number or big names or something, and see how that goes and see how that plays out. And so, yeah, we're really excited to see who's going to be coming. We've already have some tickets sold, so it's good to see some new faces and some old faces that are coming. And yeah, I'm just really interested to see how capping it at 40 and really designing it for that intimate number is going to change the way that it operates. I don't imagine it would change too much from the way that it played out before.
Hmm.
That's sort of exciting to me because 40 is that nice number where it's a big enough crowd. You feel like there's energy in the room, but it's not so big that you can't meet everybody who's there and have
Yeah.
a decent conversation with everybody who's there. So, um, yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be a special thing, I think.
Yeah, and it's like what you say, it's about community also, so limiting it I think is a wise decision. And I mean in general with this little corner it seems to be at a certain scale right now where it really works and people are kind of aware of who everyone is. But I think if this would double in size, it wouldn't be the same thing. Um, would you want it to grow much more? How do you feel about, in general, this little corridor? And for those who are not aware of what it is, I'll just put it in the introduction because otherwise it would be too much to explain, I think.
Yeah. How do you explain that in
Yeah,
2 sentence? I'll leave you that job of explaining
yeah,
what
I'll do that.
it is. Well, and is it the TLC? Is it estuary? I don't know. But to answer your question, I do hope it grows, but I hope that it grows in sort of this grassroots style where it really is in pockets of community,
Yeah,
where it's not like, I mean, I think, would it be really cool if we had 1,000-person event where we get these really big speakers and have this like really huge event? Well, sure, that would be cool. Um, is that is that doable right now? I don't think so, unless you really want to get very intellectual and
mm-hmm.
debate it all. I don't think the style of conversation that we have in Estuary um, is ready for that kind of mass event.
Yeah,
Um, but that said, I always think even if you did get to the point where we could have that super mass event where people are willing to come and make the pilgrimage to the big conference or whatever, I still think there's so much value in the small local conferences that are really focused on the community building and not just the spectacle of getting interesting people on stage to have interesting conversations.
yeah,
Of course, that's helpful in giving us something to talk about, giving us something to commune with. But there's this community aspect in it all that I think it can continue to grow. But yeah, it's almost sort of like, like church planting, if you will, where you have those, that style of church planting where it's not the big mega church, but the house churches and the planting in specific communities and small clusters. I think that's sort of the healthiest way that estuary will grow. And
mm,
I see it similar to like the AA model, where AA is very big, but you also recognize you have these little pockets of community that are smaller. And so they have their big AA conferences, but the weekly meetings are that small insular community. And I think that pattern that they have could be very helpful in kind of trying to understand what might be sustainable for estuary communities.
I'm gonna go very off topic here, but so I have a lot of friends that are really into Taylor Swift, and like at least I
You've
have
been
a lot of
watching
people
my
around.
channel, haven't you?
Yeah. And so I saw on Cassidy's channel, for those who don't know, she has a wonderful channel with a bunch of different content, and you did a series about Taylor Swift, which I started, and I was like, wow, this completely resonates with me because I just watched the documentary about her with one of my fiance's best friends who's like completely obsessed with Taylor Swift.
The Miss Americana documentary.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we were still like, or even more so, like so confused and just left with this really misunderstand, like an inability to almost understand the phenomenon and why someone like Taylor Swift grows so big. But then I started watching your series and I was like, oh, it's starting to make a lot of sense. So let me ask you, what made you make this series? And then I'll continue on from there if I have some questions about it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my coffee
Oh,
machine
yeah, good.
is just turning off, so hopefully that's not too distracting in the background. But yeah, um, Taylor Swift. So Taylor Swift has always kind of been in my world. One, because my sister is a huge Swiftie, but two, she became very popular when I was in high school. we're very close in age, and so when she was becoming popular, I mean, I remember listening to her first album in high school and finding it interesting, and I wasn't even a country person. But then after that, I kind of lost touch. But my sister was very into it, and then I had a best friend who was very into Taylor Swift, and so and outside of that, I think everybody knows Taylor Swift, at least to a point, because her songs are on the radio. They kind of get in your head in this way that, even if you don't like the song or the content, you can still know the lyrics. They're like earworms and in some ways. And so there's something interesting about that. But what made me more interested personally is sort of this tension between um, liking Taylor Swift, but also kind of having some sort of a dislike for her in the same breath. Like it was this sort of thing like I want to love her, but
Uh-huh.
there's something there that I'm kind of skeptical of or hesitant
Hmm.
of, and I don't really know why. And that's kind of gone on and off through her whole career, like in the different albums that she's put out. But when she put out Midnights, there was a couple songs on there that really resonated with me. I thought found so interesting, and I thought it was very interesting because Midnights is this concept album, which is like basically sleepless writing songs about sleepless nights throughout her life. And so what you're basically doing with that album is taking her whole breadth of career and revisiting it at an age where you have more time to reflect all of these things that have happened before. And so yeah, one thing led to another. It just became very interesting. I went in this huge deep dive trying to understand um, who she is, how she writes, what's affecting her songs. Ultimately, trying to understand why is this become so popular? Why has Taylor Swift become, the mega pop star, the it girl of today? And I
Hmm.
think there's a lot of reasons. I don't have all of the answers, but there are definitely a lot of sort of threads that I think put together start to make sense of the picture.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't really so aware of, well, I was always aware of Taylor Swift, but I wasn't aware of how popular she was until recently. Whereas really, like I saw this thing on social media where it was like a certain percentage of voters will let their vote be determined by whoever Taylor Swift endorses. It's like, and
Yeah.
mostly it just confused me because I never had anything against Taylor Swift, but I always thought her music was like it was pretty good, you know. But like I knew a lot of artists that I thought were more talented or like were better singers or better musical instrument players, and then I started hearing people say that like her lyrics are really deep and really profound, and then I started looking at the lyrics and I was like, I really don't understand that. And then my fiance was like, I figured it out. She's like, she makes a lot of references to herself and to her past albums. And another thing she said that resonated with me, she was like, people will hear something she said, like some really particular lyric, and they'll be like, oh, that applies exactly to me in this specific situation. So people feel like they're known by her.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if that resonates with you, but that was something.
No, that's totally true. Taylor Swift is incredibly self-referential throughout her music and career, and she writes in a style that she likes to call, or at least some of her albums, not all of her albums, but especially her early ones and some of the later ones, sort of diaristic confessions.
Huh?
Basically, she's sort of pouring out in detail things from her life and putting them into songs. And she played a lot of games, especially early on with her fan base, to kind of give them hints about what the songs are about, who the songs were about, those sorts of things. And so there's a bit of a parasocial relationship game going on between the fans and Taylor Swift, where they both sort of want to be known and know one another. And I think Taylor Swift, what she's done is she's been able to write from her own experiences that has had generations saying, "Oh my gosh, it's just like me."
Yeah.
And yeah, I was talking to my husband about this, Ferdy, and I asked him, "Why do you think Taylor Swift is so popular?" And he said something I think is very profound. He said that, when she's able to target this demographic, which is probably like 16 to 20-year olds in a very vulnerable place in their life, and make them feel known and seen in this way that it's very sticky, where they find her there. It's hard to shake that attachment to what she gave them
Mm.
in that
Mm.
vulnerable moment. And so she just keeps getting that vulnerable group of 16 to 20 somethings and not losing them as she grows
Yeah.
and changes. And she's very calculated, Taylor Swift. And I don't mean that in a negative way, although any
Yeah, yeah.
taken to its extreme can become a weakness, but she thinks very much about what she's doing, her next move, how she's putting herself out. And she's looking at trends. She's very online person. She's looking at these trends. And so I do think she kind of sees the trends that are coming in the younger generation,
Mm.
tries to kind of play into them to help gain that sort of connection to the
Yeah.
things that she's creating as well. And I think she does it, one, because that there's something of an interest and a pull for her too. But I also think there's a bit of a business aspect into that, of like how to make this full thing a piece of art that people are going to want to buy, and buy in multiple variants and with like a dedicated passion. She's very good at creating full worlds and embodying them and
Yeah.
bringing people into them.
Mm. No, absolutely.
I think that some of Taylor Swift's lyrics are deeper than others.
Uh-huh.
Look at Folklore, those albums, I think she really focused on sort of lyricism more than just personal storytelling. And there are certain songs that I think hit more, but I'm with you. Some of the songs, I don't care much about the drama, the drama aspect of the gossip tabloid part of her music.
Uh-huh.
That is a big part of some of the lyricism that goes into
Yeah.
music and trying to tie and weave these things together. And I think that's in one hand, it's very appealing to people and feeling like that connection, that vulnerability that she's putting out. Um, it's 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 made her career. It's made her very successful, and it's informed a whole group of songwriters and musicians following her.
Yeah.
But it comes at a cost, and Taylor's written quite often about that cost.
Yeah.
She kind of still plays into the game, and so it's very tricky. And I'm very hesitant about that part of her brand, because
Mm.
I think it's yeah, I think it gets really tricky.
I've seen some of the people that I know speak about going to like her concerts, or like now the Aries tour is happening in Europe, I think. I don't know if elsewhere as well. But they'll say like, "Are you going to the Aries tour?" Or they'll say like, "I'm going to the Aries tour here and here," and they're speaking about it as if they're going to do a pilgrimage or something. Like it means that much.
Yeah.
Like it's like they're going to see their guru. Like it's and that in general always makes me feel a bit like icky with concerts. Sometimes people with artists sometimes go to such extremes where it
Yep.
almost makes me want to stay away from those types of settings where I'm like, is this like a type of worship that we're doing here?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fine line, right?
Yeah.
She's definitely created, because of the way she writes, because of how self-referential she is of her own life and her history. She's definitely created like a mythical figure of herself
Yeah.
in many ways. And yeah, there are certain patterns that you're seeing with the touring process that does feel very kind of religious,
Mm.
like this sort of participation. And I think Paul Vanderklay's talked about fandoms like religion, and I'm sure other people have too. But you definitely kind of see that a bit in um, the Taylor Swift phenomenon, where she has there's a bit of a liturgy of what it means to, you know, be a Swiftie,
Yeah.
participate in those live events and those processes, whether it's dressing up, trading friendship bracelets.
Oh yeah.
That's the 21, 22 hat. There's all of these little things. What's your surprise song? There's all of these sort of liturgical things that um, are happening, like small L liturgical things that are happening that do sort of mirror religion, and it's very interesting. There's probably smarter people than I to really dig into that phenomenon.
It's like also the identity claim often I hear is like I'm a Swiftie. Like if people are either a Swiftie or they're usually like, well, maybe they're indifferent, but sometimes people are really against Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
But I rarely see someone that goes to her concerts that doesn't identify themselves as a Swiftie, which
Mm.
is like, which I don't see with all artists. Like I know people that go to plenty of concerts where it's like, yeah, I'm just going to see this band and it's fun and like it's not my life, but it's it's rarely the case with this. Why do you
Yeah,
think that is?
that's interesting. I don't fully know. Any answer that I will give is all sort of off the top of my head.
Yeah.
It's just random theorizing. I wonder if part of it is sort of the way that Taylor Swift has um, positioned herself in the public, where she often frames herself as the victim and kind of makes it like, well, everybody hated me. They tried to destroy my career,
Mm,
all these things. Yet there's this group of people that love me. And so there's this sort of sense of like, if you're gonna go be part of the Swift thing, you don't want to say the criticism because that's so vulnerable to Taylor Swift herself in those
yeah.
things. So I could see that being part of it. Um, there was something else and I lost it. It
Mm,
flew right out of my head.
yeah.
I definitely think that might be a big part of it. Oh, the other thing I think, Taylor Swift has been known to show special treatment to people who show themselves outwardly as being her ally,
Yeah.
such as secret sessions, these little things that she'll do. Like she's visited random people's houses. Like she's written songs about certain fans. There are things that she's done, and even during the Eras tour, you can kind of see the way that the TikTok videos go. There's
Mm,
this certain relationship that she's building with her audience that's performative in two ways. If you perform for her, you show her you love her, she'll perform right for you.
ah.
And there's this sort of like push and pull where it's like you want to be the swiftiest Swifty ever in the hopes that someday the queen might call you into the
Yeah.
room and you get that attention. Um, I do think there's a little bit of that sneaks in some of that aspect of
Hmm.
the Swift fandom.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's that parasocial thing that gets very, very tricky.
Yeah. Yeah, I even see it in this little corner a bit, like with I know Java Vakey. Sometimes he speaks about that. That for a lot of people, meeting him is like, you know, meeting your savior, and he's
Yeah,
exactly trying to avoid that. So I also asked him, I think I asked him what he does with that, how he feels about that. But I think I heard him say that for him it's important to realize that for some people it is that important of a moment, but outside of that, he wants to avoid people making him into some sort of figure that's
mm,
gonna save them. He's trying to not let it be about him. And I think that's probably an inherent danger about artists.
yeah.
And you know how like Jonathan Peugeot is always like people didn't put their names on their iconography and like their art back in the day because the art wasn't about them. And now it feels like it really, really is. Like your
Mm.
whole brand is yourself. And
Well,
so yeah.
it was interesting. I went to the Rijksmuseum last weekend with Justin Wells
Hmm.
and Jeff from the Discord and Joe, and I think it was Justin who was talking to me about how art has changed very drastically since we've started putting it in museums. Whereas before, so the reason we started actually putting art in museums was because of so he was telling me. I could be wrong about this, but this is what he was telling me. It started being put in museums because of iconoclasm, where they were destroying this art. And so they're like, okay, we have to find a way to protect it. So let's put it in these buildings and keep it safe and, protect it from there. And it unknowingly created this sense where art eventually became disconnected from participation in some cultural way into creating art for art's sake. And so instead of having these paintings that were embodied in some sort of like ritual or culture
Mm.
or participation, now it is very much, I want to paint for the fame. And I
Yeah.
don't think most successful artists don't actually make it if fame is their
Yeah.
goal. But there's always that trickiness of why do we create and what do we create and how are we creating? Because
Mm.
now we've created whole industries of making money from art, film being probably the most successful of them all. But there are a lot of different industries where you can take artistry and put economic value into it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's wrong. And I think that opens up a very interesting path for a lot of modern people. But it does create a bit of that disconnect of what art was traditionally and
Yeah.
what it is now. And I think sometimes that's why we get kind of funky art, especially
Mm.
in sort of postmodernism, where it's like we're trying to say something different or stand out um, because you need to,
Yeah.
instead of art evolving to service the culture you're in and the needs of the community that you're in, that
Mm.
participation.
Yeah.
It it creates a different process in the way that that's going to evolve.
I always, for me, beauty is very important in art,
Mm.
and that's why it's sometimes hard to understand some modern forms of art, let's say. How do you feel about that? Does it bother you in any way? Does it intrigue you? I know for some people it's very deeply stimulating, for example.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't bother me probably as much as it bothers some others. Um,
Mm.
but that that also is because in some way I recognize beauty can find its way in a lot of things,
Mm.
even things that don't necessarily scream beauty. Now, there's varying degrees of beautiful, but I think sometimes you need those varying degrees of beautiful to meet people where they're at in that journey of understanding what beauty is and learning how to be drawn in by it and compelled by it and changed by it. So, I do hope that we aspire to more than some of the art, because I do think some art now is not looking for beauty at all. It's looking for power or political messaging
Yeah.
or a whole variety of other things first before really beauty. And I think those are ultimately going to corrupt the thing that you're creating, because it's basically a sermon in a package
Yeah.
that we're calling art.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that sometimes those concepts of power, politics, or religion get weaved within the art to say something about the world in a very beautiful way. So I just try my best to find the beauty in the art that I see, and when I don't understand it, try to listen to those who do find it beautiful
Yeah.
and help that kind of shape me. And yeah, just keep moving towards myself as I create art to be increasingly more beautiful.
Mm.
And I'm always going to fall short of that standard that I want. Um, but that's part of the journey, I think, as an artist, where you are shaped by the beauty, and sometimes the places where you fall from the ideal teach you something very more beautiful than if you could have captured the perfect picture from the get-go.
Yeah. That's beautiful. It's actually leads me to my next question, which is what is most important to you right now? And maybe that's changed over the years. Truth, goodness, or beauty? Is there one that specifically pulls you?
It's very hard for me to separate the three because they're
Oh
so
yeah.
intertwined.
Mm,
But I recently have been reading The Ethics of Beauty by Timothy Patissas, and that book has just been life-changing for me, incredibly compelling.
mm,
And it really makes an argument for sort of a beauty-first approach to seeing the world and, like being struck by beauty, pursuing that to help show you what's good and participating in the good to reveal what's true, which is probably not how I used to see it. I used to be more of a truth first approach person.
yeah.
And that beauty first approach has really changed the way that I've seen the world. It's made it's made living life in uncertainty a bit easier. But it's also stretched me in ways because a beauty first approach to ethics and to life is not always uh, rational
Yeah.
and symmetrical. It has its own shape, it has its own form, and you have to kind of wrestle with the wildness and the chaos that comes with that. Um, and yeah, you have to wrestle with the sorrow that comes with that beauty.
Mm,
There's the, there's something about that. I don't know. There's something about that process where it's like you're struck by the beauty, but then you also have to kind of go through the sorrow that helps that beauty shine.
yeah.
But like in going through that sorrow, there's that beauty that is like that beacon and that light and that hope that keeps you moving forward in a way that um, truth doesn't always do.
Yes. Yes.
Even if it
Absolutely.
is very important, because I think too often we separate those three things out and
Mm,
put one above the others and try to minimize them, but they're really in a dance together.
yeah.
And it's like, how do you take the first step to be in line with that dance?
Mm.
Is the question. So yeah.
That's beautiful. But like the you do you make films and well you're a filmmaker at least. And so to me that seems very beauty informed. But I can see how truth and goodness also play play a role there.
Well, and a lot of the films that I've done, they've been documentary.
Mm,
And so you're really wrestling with those questions of truth and good, but you're packaging them in a frame of beauty.
yeah.
And that becomes a really complicated dance. And I don't even know if I've mastered that dance. I'm still very young in filmmaking, even
Mm,
though I've probably been tinkering with it for the last 10, 15 years, but
yeah.
that's not really much to master anything.
Yeah.
It's gone in waves too, but yeah, that idea of I wish I had found beauty ethics sooner in my documentary filmmaking because I think I would have tried to put more of the emphasis on the beauty.
Mm,
Um, and not that I didn't, I always wanted whatever I had to be beautiful, but there definitely was sort of this sense of like I have to get the story straight and and express the truth as best as I can see it for the integrity of myself and for the integrity of the people watching my films. But while that is very important, I think, and especially when you're talking about representing real humans and representing real stories and trying to talk about problems that are happening in the world, there is something about being a filmmaker and being able to utilize beauty to tell these stories. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a journalist, I'm a filmmaker. I'm telling people stories and I'm trying to weave images in that to help deepen the sense of those stories. And
sorry, my brother was going. I hope he's not on the shot with the shirt off. Get upset with me.
he was behind your neck very briefly,
Okay,
but
okay, good,
I
good,
don't think anybody saw it. I think it's
good.
still safe for work.
Yeah.
uh,
The author you named was Timothy,
mhm.
last name?
Petitsis. I actually had a conversation with him on my channel. It was so lovely. Um, he he's very interesting guy, and I really find the way he thinks fascinating. And he kind of talks about beauty ethics in the frame of the Orthodox Church because he's an
Hmm.
Orthodox theologian. And so it's been very helpful for me as I was becoming Orthodox. I actually found the book sort of, I think I was a catechumen at the time, but either I was or I was on the edge of being one and moving my way into the church. And I think that resource really helped solidify the path that I was on, this feeling that I had towards orthodoxy, and sort of settled a lot of questions in the next steps of how to move forward in my Christian faith and embodying that. And yeah, and it's a big book. It's like 700 pages. I'm only like a third of the way through.
Oh yeah.
And I think I've reread the first couple chapters twice. Because yeah, there's just, and it's written very interestingly because he basically writes it like a conversation with his editor. So it's just a
Okay.
back and forth. His editor asks a question and then he writes in sort of this conversational style of like his answer. And it's, I don't know why, but it's so interesting to me. And
Yeah.
probably I just love conversations and people and I find that interesting. But um, it was a very fascinating way to write a book. Especially because there's so often people trying to write their theses and, you know, be the authority. Yet there was something about it that he was kind of trying to make sense and be an authority on this thing, but within the context of this back and forth exploration,
Yeah.
which
I
was
think that
very.
makes you more open and like receptive
Mm,
to other ideas as well. That's why I love Plato because it's written in the dialogue form.
mm,
I think that's brilliant, and I don't think it's arbitrary. So
yeah.
I'd love to get it. I put it in the description in the talk with him as well. Is it
Okay.
up on your channel? Has it been
Yes,
up?
yes. I think we had it sometime last year. It was before I had my baby, so yeah, I was still pregnant then. So it was before, so it was probably almost a year ago, 10 months ago maybe.
Yeah.
So the video quality is a little shoddy, but the conversation is just very
Awesome.
beautiful. So I would definitely recommend people listen to it. He's got a lot of interesting things to say,
Okay.
and I think he's been on Jonathan Peugeot's channel as well. So there's other places you
Hmm.
can find him. You don't have to go to my channel to find him, but I did have a conversation with
Good.
him.
Good. I was wondering, what is sacred to you?
Man, that is a loaded question.
Hmm. Yeah, I like those.
Uh,
I find them really fun.
yeah, I think in the last 5 years, have really had a challenge of understanding, like, been challenged in my life to understand what is sacred and how it is we interact with the sacred. And I think the easy answer would be something very specific that I hold sacred is my religion. Like that's a very easy thing to see in my life and in understanding how that's sacred. Yet I think sacredness probably expands so much further than that little box
Yeah.
is. But this little box that I participate in the sacred, I think is expanding my world in seeing the sacred in all things,
Yeah.
different ways. Um, but it also probably depends on what you mean by sacred.
Hmm.
Because there are things that I probably personally hold dear and sacred um, at this point in my life that are more apparent to me than other things. And, a lot of that is family and relationships and life and the way that we interact with that and create more of it. Um, I think all of those things are very sacred.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. It's
Oh,
a
it's great.
big question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but I've been asking it to more people, and it's interesting to see different responses. I think that starting off with religion is very useful because I think it is true that there are, at least I think it's true, that when you participate with other people in worship of what we all conceive of as the highest there, it must be sacred. Like you can feel it, like it's so strong. But then there are moments in just everyday life where it seems the sacred also, and of course that's true because God is reality, like, and I think that in that way religion can help you see um the sacred everywhere, but still it feels that there are degrees to which it appears.
Well, there's degrees into which I can sense it, and
Yeah.
it wanes and weans depending on um, how oriented I am to the sacred in different ways. And I think sometimes it's not even my own orientation, it's the allowance of which I'm
Yes.
able to see it for
Mm,
my own good, probably. There's probably a huge amount of the sacred I can't see because I'm not ready for it. Um,
mhm.
but yeah, there's something interesting about the sacred, I think, for me personally, and just the recognition of how do I interact with it in a personal level. Because I think I grew up always with a respect for the sacred, but that didn't always manifest in the way that I would participate and act. I think sometimes there was a flippancy that came in that participation of the sacred, and I'm sort of in this, as the pendulum swings, I'm sort of in this place of kind of a pause and understanding, okay, where is my responsibility in the participation of the sacred? Where is that place where I do need to have more conscious respect for that, um, to help me further see the depth of what sacredness is and how it changes us. But yeah, I think there is something true to the idea that um, the world we live in, it becomes iconic in different ways, and it's always reflecting the sacred to us in these different ways if we have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. And yeah, I think I'm just realizing how blind I am, and how limited my hearing is in the grand scope, and trying to reassess um, the ways I process that. That's been a huge challenge, and I probably fail more days than I succeed, but you just keep trying.
Yeah. One thing you said stood out to me where you said something about not being ready to see certain, was it levels of sacredness? I'm not sure exactly the quote, but what do you mean by that exactly? Being ready to be
What do
shown?
I mean by that? That's a good question. I think the best way to answer it is kind of grounded in my own journey, and the recognition that over time, God has revealed different things to me in different spaces. And in some ways, He's revealed things to me in ways that I was like, oh, wouldn't it be lovely if I had known that 10 years ago? But then I sit down and I ask myself that question, Cassidy, if you had known this 10 years ago, would you have listened? Would you have seen it? Would you have known? Would it have made the effect? Or did you need the thing that happened over that 10 years to prepare you to have the eyes to see it in that moment when you did? And the answer is always, oh, yeah, I needed that 10 years. I needed that time. And I think that's something so beautiful about the way that I'm shifting to see Christianity, and the recognition that we're all in this process of being saved, and we're all in this process of learning how to know God in all of these different ways, even when we ourselves don't see it. And there's kind of a beauty in that, and a joy in that, even in the pain of what that means, in that recognition of I'm not where I want to be, yet there is some mercy being given to me, even if I can't see it and express it, that is hopefully moving me towards a better participation with the divine and the sacred, that makes me more of who I was always meant to be, more human and more like the thing that created us. I don't know. It's it's like it's hard to comprehend it all. It's like such a big thing in a small moment. That's how it feels to me. It feels like I'm swimming in this huge ocean of potential.
Mm,
It's a very simple concept in this very simple moment.
yeah.
Um, yeah. Did that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, actually. I was thinking about death a lot
Mm,
for the last couple of years. I spoke about it with Luke Thompson, who you know,
yeah.
and
I love it.
he's great. Was really happy to sit down with him. I'll upload that conversation on Sunday, but I asked him about death, and he's like deeply fascinated by it. He's almost like so positive toward it. Well, it's not that he wants to die, but it's more like he really doesn't. He doesn't. At least he thinks he doesn't fear it. He doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't see it as a bad thing at all. What do you think of death? Do you think it's what do you, do you think
I
it's real?
also have this weird fascination with death. I think a lot of it is based in the fact that my mother was a grief counselor when I was growing up. So, and she worked as a hospice grief counselor. So basically, for people who don't know what that is, people who have terminal illnesses or on the brink of death,
Mm,
they just accept death instead of trying to put medical interventions to extend their life. They just say, no, I want to be as comfortable as possible until the end, but this is the end and I'm accepting that. And so having that growing up, being so close to death gave me this funny relationship with death where I don't have a fear or an uncomfortability with it the way I think many others do. And probably a bit of a dark sense of humor around it in a way to kind of cope with this very heavy thing that is um, end of life.
yeah.
And yeah, I do think that because I'm a religious person and because there is this belief and this hope in death not being the end of the story, it doesn't make death as terrifying. But that doesn't mean I'm not scared of death. I think I am scared of death in some ways.
Mm,
Um, I think I get scared of death coming too soon and coming at a time when I'm found wanting. That really strikes me because it's you life is a gift. We have no control of when it continues and when it ends. We have no control of the fact that we are even here breathing. It's this beautiful gift, and I take advantage of it
yeah.
every day, and I I do things that wrong others and myself, and it puts death out into the world. And I don't want that to be the end of the whole story, but I also don't want that to be the end of my story. And I think the whole process of uh, faith and a participation in Christianity is um, voluntarily choosing death in order to produce a life, and a life that's eternal, that extends you. And this idea that sin is putting death out into the world, spiritual, but also sometimes physical. And that, because that death is going out into the world, we pay this price for it. It affects us as humans.
Mm,
And this icon of Jesus, of like taking on death that was not deserved and overcoming it and having life and life eternal and resurrection life, is that model that we look to, where we die to the things we want that would put death into the world. And you can kind of look at it, I think, was it in one of Paul's letters where it's like to, he says something like, to preserve your own life, you lose it, but to lose your life, you find it. That's how I see a lot of the world and the way that sin kind of manifests in this way. It's like we're chasing life. We're chasing whether fame, money, passions. Like we have all of these things that we're chasing to get a taste of life. But when we do that in the wrong way, it ends up bringing death into the world for us and everyone around us. Yet there is something about putting my own will aside and adopting the will of one that's greater than me and dying to that other person, that you voluntarily choose death. You have to move through death. Yet on the other end, there's this life that could never have happened if you tried to take it on your own terms.
Mm.
And that's where I think this idea of death, although I do think it is severe and still scary in this way, it does lose its power in the right orientation.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I love this life. I think it's just a fraction of the beauty that holds us in the end of the story. But I love it. I don't want to lose it. But I don't want to hold it on my own terms because, yeah, I think that's just gonna make death enter the story in ways that uh, they're not. It's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
In sense.
Do you have any specific ideas about life beyond death in terms of your conscious experience, perhaps, or even whether or not any identity remains of you?
I don't know. I mean, I definitely believe that there will be some physical aspect to it. I'm not a Gnostic. I don't think we're going to be out in the world floaty spirits.
Mm.
And I hope that there is a physical nature to life because there is something about the tangible things in life that add a beauty to it. But yeah, if I'm honest, I have no concept of what it really looks like.
Yeah.
And I have a bit of hesitancy ever to speak
Yeah.
confidence of what that I do. I think it'll be um, I think it'll be in a way that I won't expect. Like
Yeah.
I think it'll um, extend my conscious idea of what it should be.
Yeah. That makes
Um,
sense.
but yeah, the specifics of it, I don't know. I have no idea.
That's good.
That's kind of the mystery of it all, kind of intriguing. It's like, who's to know? Like the only thing I feel I know is that it's gonna be good.
Mm.
It's gonna be beautiful. And if we're there, it's true. So
Yeah. 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 That's good. Do you fear God? And is it good to do so?
well, the Bible would say so. And
Mm.
but not in this. I try not to have it in the sense of it being like a horror movie fear.
Yeah. Like paralyzing.
No, like it's sort of in the way I at 5 years old feared my dad when I didn't do as he asked.
Yeah.
I knew that there wasn't going to be um, you know, physically harmful or like negative consequences to that.
Yeah.
It's never a good feeling, and I knew there was some consequence coming, and there was, and rightfully so, and this recognition of him trying to teach me what it is to be a human in the culture and the context that I was brought up in a way that would help me succeed for what was coming. Um, so I definitely fear God. I sometimes wonder if I fear him enough. Um, but I also wonder if I fear him too much.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I
or
always
I
think
don't
of,
have that, yeah, right orientation with it.
well, I think we never really will fully figure out the exact.
Yeah, well, maybe in the second coming or the
Yeah.
other, but
Yeah.
in this life, I think it'll be constantly that pattern of training of
Mm.
learning what it means.
Yeah.
Um,
If God is love, then love is to be feared. Then love must be, then judgment must also be part of love.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
think about it in a grounded sense. Like, love is a beautiful thing, but it's terrifying.
Okay. How so?
Well, um, like I love my husband. I trust him implicitly.
Yeah.
My life um, has never been more grounded and beautiful than with him. But I owe a lot to him, and that love opens up a lot of responsibility in the way that I act towards him, in the way that I treat him, and the way that I respond when I am received an action that doesn't feel loving to myself. And then through that, we've created a little person, or we've participated in the creation of a little person, whether it was us creating or not. I'm still not fully sure,
Yeah.
but there's this responsibility given to us. And that love, it just multiplies, but it multiplies the responsibility of what it is too. Of, well, now my actions are not only affecting my husband, but they affect my daughter, and she's watching me to see if what I tell her matches the things that I do. And she's watching me as I do all of these things in life and calculating how they affect the world around her and myself. And that's scary. That's
Yeah.
a scary, like, daunting feeling.
Yeah.
I I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it's terrifying.
Yeah, I agree.
It's love. Love is far more than just an emotional feeling, although I'm sure there's part of that seeps in. But yeah, there's action, and there's a denial of your own feelings at times to show love to another. And like, I think even outside of my own marriage, there have been times where you love someone, but the loving action is to walk away and not to throw yourselves into something that actually isn't good.
Hmm.
That can be scary too.
Yeah.
Um, it's it's not all butterflies and happiness. Love is a
No.
complicated mess, and um, it shows you your shortcomings in ways that nothing much else will. But it also gives grace in your shortcomings in a way nothing else does.
Do you think that mercy is equally strong as judgment in God in Christ, or do you think that one is stronger than the other?
Can you repeat the question? Just want to make sure I understand it.
So I'll elaborate a little bit. When I listen to Jonathan Peugeot, he often explains Christ as having mercy and judgment on two sides of him. So even in the iconography, I think it's being shown like that. Is there an equal power to these two? I don't know how to call them forces, or is one stronger than the other? Like, would judgment be stronger than mercy, or would mercy be more dominant than judgment?
I don't know. Probably depends on the person
Yeah.
and what's needed for the situation.
Mm,
I mean, if we talk about true justice, it requires both
yeah.
judgment and mercy. But I think whatever it's weighted, it's probably perfectly oriented. But I don't know. I'd have a hard time feeling confident saying it is one way or the other because I just
Yeah.
don't. I think it's probably perfectly oriented in a way, but if you're asking it in sort of a linear scale, no, I don't know.
Yeah. I think as often, like I sometimes ask a question and I think the frame is probably not capturing it fully. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And what do you think? You
Well,
have an answer.
I think that judgment is very important, and does seem to be that they work very well in balance to each other. But there's something about Christ, the mercy to me has always seemed most beautiful and most dominant in the way I see Christ, let's say. But I know that he also judged, like it's very important.
Well,
But
you couldn't have mercy if there wasn't a judgment.
yeah, that's true.
You know, like there's something that they're interlocked in this weird way where it's like to have mercy means that I'm in need, and if I'm in need, it means that there's something wanting.
Mm,
That something wanting um, is likely coming from myself. But if not, there's still a judgment being made of like, well, where is this thing that's wanting, and why is mercy the good solution to that?
yeah.
That's kind of how I would think about it, but yeah, it's something I probably have to think a lot more about.
Yeah, I think it's worth thinking about. But then in the end, I always think like it's not that important, all these intellectual things. The most important thing is to be good, and to love as deeply as you can possibly do. Um, but there's definitely an important role to it. Like I love that the author you mentioned wrote the 700-page book about the ethics of beauty, was it?
Yeah,
And so there's definitely a part to it. But lately, more and more, I stopped listening to like a lot of podcasts, and I'm more interested in the personal. I find it really powerful.
yeah.
Um, and I see that in you as well. You like people a lot as well.
I love
Seems
people. People is like my lifeblood. I just find them so fascinating. And like even when I'm listening to podcasts, I think often it's like even if they're very intellectual, I listen to it because I like the person and
yeah, I
and
was the
think that
same.
I find them interesting. I find them trustworthy. There's something about them that I want to understand. And like even people I don't like going back to Taylor Swift, it's like I deep dive deep into her because I want to remove that sort of angst and
Yeah,
find love her outside of whatever tension that is there. And so I find myself often doing that too. If there's someone that I have feelings that are not quite so fond, there
mm,
sometimes I do that deep dive to try to understand what's going on here. Why don't I like this? And find the humanity in the person through it.
yeah,
Sometimes I fail, and that's where you kind of have to drop it and
yeah,
try to hold on to the humanity outside of what they create. But um, yeah, I find people very interesting, and honestly, since I've had my baby, a lot of these theological kind of heady questions are just gone. And I don't know if it's my hormones and my IQ is lower because there's less blood going to my brain or something, but there's just something about it that it's sort of like, oh my gosh, like this little thing needs me for my survival. And the the question of um I don't know, whatever theological horse you want to put in front of me. Well, I think probably has a place and is important. It just loses that intensity of needing to know the answer because I just want to know what it is to live a good life for her, so she can see that and we can work together towards that. And I think a lot of those questions get answered when you get out of the armchair
yeah,
and start tending the garden you're in.
yeah,
And so, yeah, I think lately it's been tending a lot more gardens, and the consumption that I do, which I still do a lot and should probably do less, but it definitely is more people oriented and watching things that I find beautiful or interesting or people that I'm like, oh, I just really like them. And a lot of it isn't intellectual, it's silly things, but
yeah,
um, yeah, I don't know. There is something about these questions where it's like, does it matter? Do I trust God enough to believe that whatever side of the justice and mercy question lands on, that it's good? I
yeah,
do. And does it matter? Does that matter with my actions? Probably not. Like I probably should act in the same way independent of whatever way that scale falls. And so it's very interesting to think about. And kind of this recognition that God is this personal thing. At least I believe he's this personal thing that I can know. And so there's something interesting in that, in knowing God in that way.
yeah,
Um, yeah, but there's also that beauty and sort of not needing to know that answer in a concrete way, but like allowing that answer to come through that experience,
Yeah.
and um, learning that through my relationship with God, but also with others as He shines through them and works through them.
Yeah. It's one thing that you say is really, it's very true for me as well, and that is like trusting that God is good and then no longer feeling the need for something to be true. It's like if it's true, it will be, like, and that's such a liberation.
Yeah, and it's so funny the way you say that. It's like, yeah, that's very true of where I am now, and it's not always been true of me,
Mm,
in the sense that I wanted a sense to know something was more true than I do now, and I still care about things that are true, especially when it's pragmatic in my life and the way that it plays out. Because I don't want to support things or follow things that don't play out the way that I think in reality. I want to move towards the good, and sometimes you can't understand the good without orienting it with the truth.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's sort of that idea of like, if it's true, it's true. But there's that transformative power that you see when you see people kind of participating in the good, or like really cultivating beauty in its most pure sense. And I don't always think that comes out in the popular forms of beauty. I think often there's really dark sides to the popular cosmetic commercial side of
Yeah.
beauty. And that's where I think the conversation of beauty kind of gets um, complicated, because it's looking at it in a shallow sense instead of this deep, complex sense of what beauty I think really is.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's when you kind of get to that place where you allow those things to transform you, that idea of like me having the claim on what is true becomes much less important. I try my best to be honest to myself what I think is true or not, and unwilling to um, placate that to skate away some sort of consequence that might come from my belief in what is true. But yeah, what is true, and it'll show itself over
Mm,
time.
mm,
And yeah, there's kind of a relief in that, not having to capture it and box it and hold it in my head
mm.
for a good life. I don't know if that makes sense.
Everything you've said made a lot of sense. So,
Good. Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I can't even string sentences together anymore.
yeah, but like you can see beyond it if you pay attention. I hope people that are listening have the same. But yeah, absolutely. Thinking what else I really wanted to ask you. I always like people to learn more about people's personalities, and I've been doing that with a couple of guests where I was wondering if they've done the personality test. And have you done it, the Peterson one?
I haven't done the Peterson one. I don't think. I've done Myers-Briggs. I forget what I am. On the Enneagram, I'm a challenger. I'm an 8.
What does that mean?
So challengers, they like to take on challenges. They're very
Uh-huh.
hard on themselves, and sometimes very hard on others, but always in the process of like trying to be the best that they can. They're very visionary thinkers. They think very big. They're very ambitious. Um, yeah, and they hold themselves and others to very high standards.
Yeah. So you
Um,
do that.
yeah, I think it's on in some ways, but yeah, there is definitely something in me that takes on these crazy goals and these crazy things that are way over me, and just like pushes myself to be the best that I can. And I do think I have that tendency to try to push others, although I've tampered it a bit, because I recognize that I can be extreme in that. And sometimes, people just need me to be there and not try to push them to their
Yeah.
potential every moment. But, you allow me to, I can really kind of push, but I'm definitely goal oriented. I'm definitely ambitious, sometimes too ambitious for my own good.
Uh-huh.
um, but it's been an interesting. shift and like test for my personality as I become a mother, because a lot of these things, like even choosing to move to the Netherlands and choosing to get married, it's basically taken these things that I was moving towards, these enormous goals that what I was making, steps towards, and basically putting it away and saying, if I never accomplish that, that's fine, because I'm trading this thing for this other life that's more beautiful and more simple. And yeah, there's that challenger in my head that, sort of goes. I remember when I was pregnant, I was very sick all the time, and I couldn't do as much as I wanted to do. Although I was still doing a lot. I was still studying several hours a day with Dutch and, doing different things. But there's this voice in my head that says, you are not being productive enough. You're not being productive enough. Yet on the other hand, it's like, hold on, I am quite physically the most productive I've ever been in my entire life. I'm literally growing life in me. You need to cool it, man.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
there's always that tension, I think, because there's that ambition and because there's that drive to like do things and put good into the world and be helpful. Um, that when you have to slow down and you have to be a mom and you have to put yourself in the back seat, you have to learn those tendencies to realize, hey, this is not the most important thing in the world. And you can still do a lot of good exactly where you are. And it's probably far more good than anything on paper that someone else is going to tell you is good.
Yeah. 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 I have similar like personality, I think, the ambition stuff, but I think I learned to reframe that in the sense that getting married, for example, is like part of it. Like it's one of those goals, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
No, and I don't say that I think getting married and having kids was the best thing I ever did.
mm,
But there's this cultural narrative, especially for women, of
yeah.
like, especially in the fields where I was in, it's like you gotta make a name for yourself. You gotta be the change. You gotta be out there and do something. And I love creating, and so it wasn't so much I needed fame or some recognition, but I knew that if I could get some recognition and people trusted me, I could do a lot more cool, fun things.
Yes.
And so there was that excitement, but that realization that this path that I'm on is there's a lot of beauty in it. I got a lot of joy. There's a lot of good that I can do. But this other path is far more beautiful. And it's worth getting rid of all of that stuff, maybe never touching it again, to have this beautiful thing and tend this little garden that is smaller in scale for a lot of people, and not quite as exciting, but still immensely valuable and beautiful. And so the intellectual side of myself knows that story completely. And even the emotional side of myself knows that story completely. That doesn't stop the little demons in my head running narratives that are counter to the thing that I actually
Yes,
consider
yes.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It's tough.
That's part of like the how way you were raised and seeing what is ambition and what is success also. And I think,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things probably part of it was how I was raised.
yeah.
A lot of it, American culture, you're
Yeah.
very ambitious. Um, then there's a lot of it of just probably life experiences that led me to
See.
a place that cultivated that in me. And it kind of wanes and weans.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's definitely, it's that part of my personality where at its best has given me the opportunities and given me the strength to do all of this really cool stuff that plenty of people wish that they could do but never did. Yet on the other hand, it constantly there's that constant pitfall where
Hmm.
you're pushing yourself further than you ever should. You're minimizing the things that you've done in the chance to continue to develop yourself more. And yeah, I'm learning. There's always that learning streak of how to have a healthy balance, and I'm thankful that it's mostly been healthy. But when you slow down, it really opens the door to some of that in ways you don't fully recognize when you're just running with everything you got at the thing you think you should.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's kind of wild. It's like I often kind of describe it. It's a kind of hard that on paper seems kind of trivial, but it's more it's this weird, more intense thing than when you're throwing yourself at these crazy ambitious things. And I kind of compare it to like hiking. I went on this hike a long time ago when I was in Arizona, and the first 2 hours was just the slow incline, kind of like that for just 2 hours. You can kind of see that's going up, but just barely. And then the last half are these crazy like rock climbs that you got to like use your whole body and like strategize how to get up there. And the worst part is the first 2 hours
Yeah.
because it feels like you're doing nothing, but your whole body is on fire and everything hurts. And you're just having to pull that tension. Whereas when you're facing these big rocks, it's like slower. It's like you perceive it is harder and probably a little more dangerous. But there's something about it that becomes easier because of the mental frame that you're in and the
Yeah.
recognition of what you're doing and how it looks. That's what settling down is like. It's that slow incline where it's like there's still a lot of good to that, but it just feels like it shouldn't be as hard as it is, but it's very hard.
Yeah.
It's increased for me because it's not that I just got married and had a baby. It's I got married, I had a baby, I moved to a different country, I lost my career, and I'm having to integrate into a new culture in a language I don't speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
You got the whole shebang.
yeah, so there's still that challenger part of me that sees like if it weren't for my personality, I don't think I would ever think that was
Yes.
something that I could handle.
Yeah.
And you know, so there's that part where it's like when I really look at everything going on, it's like you're doing a lot more than you think you are. But there's that personality side in my head that always wants to do more because I expect more of myself. I just want the best out of myself. And I don't like falling short. Um, yeah, and it's harder when you fall short when it doesn't feel like you're doing a lot, even though you are doing a lot.
Yeah. I
I don't
think
know.
that's no, it's good. I think so. You worry, but like I really get it. Like I
Okay,
really
good,
like
good.
everything you're saying is extremely clear and it makes a lot of sense.
Well, and I
So,
hope I'm answering your questions too, because I
yes,
realize sometimes I start somewhere and the way my brain works, I go on long tangents and then I come back and I'm like, did that even answer your question?
you did. You did. I mean, we're a lot of us listen to Jordan, so I mean, we're very used to listening to someone string a bunch of things together. Uh, I have to catch a train very soon, so I'm gonna have to finish it up. But I will repeat the Breakwater Festival that's coming up. I'll put everything down below. I put your channel down below.
Yes, July 5th through the 7th. You can meet me and hear my ramblings in person. I am not a speaker, but I will be there to talk and you know, hopefully facilitate a really good community event. So if you're in the Netherlands, we would definitely love to have you, and especially if you're interested in estuary and being participating in that more consistently. We'd love to support you guys in that, and whatever way we can.
Thanks for that. You're doing very important work with this, and I'm really grateful. And I'm excited to see all of it happen here in the coming months. I'd say yes.
Well,
And
and we're
so
gonna get you to a festival one day. I swear we
yes, I
will
will
do
make it. I will really make it next year for doing it. All right, Cassidy. Have
it.
a nice rest of your day.
All right. Bye bye.
See you.